Shalom Aleichem, a good Tavoch, and a good eve of the 10th of Tevet. The 10th of Tevet, the famous day that we, till now, we have been fasting annually in regard to the siege that was placed by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, upon the holy city of Yerushalayim. And we're told that the severity of this fast is greater than all the other fasts that we fast to commemorate the destruction of the two temples, to remember the destruction of the two temples. Because if the fast of the 10th of Tevet would fall on a Shabbos, we would have to fast. Despite the fact that we never fast on Shabbos, the 10th of Tevet has such a severity about it that we would have to fast. Although, due to the fact that we are the calendar, the Jewish calendar from the times of Hillel HaZaken, we're told that he went and he made a perpetual calendar after the fact that we were not able to sanctify the new month, the new moon, every month through receiving witnesses in the Sanhedrin. So he calculated a perpetual calendar, and in this calendar, he made sure that the 10th of Tevet will never fall on a Shabbos. The closest that it ever comes to is that the 10th of Tevet falls on a Friday, and then that's the closest to getting to fasting on Shabbos, because from the time that we usher in the Shabbos until we finish davening Ma'ariv and we come home to make Kiddush, so we're actually fasting in the Shabbos, but we're allowed, and we don't break our fast till after Kiddush. But in regard to this, in regard to the fact that we see the inner essence of the negative things, like the 10th of Teves, the siege that and the chutzpah, the audacity that Nebuchadnezzar had to place a siege on the holy city of Yerushalayim around the Beis Hamikdash, which was something that no nation fathomed ever before, since the Beis Hamikdash was standing. And this is due to, as the Rebbe says, the fact that we have come to the epoch of the eve of the revelation of the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach, of our righteous Redeemer. And therefore, what is focused on, what is capitalized here, is the goodness, the inner essence, as the Rambam says in Halacha. He brings in regard to the concepts of the fasts, that all these fasts will be transformed into days of happiness and joy. And therefore, we're already feeling the happiness and joy of the inner essence of the fasts, even at this moment. And Teichef Umiyad will be able to feel it and see it with all our senses, with the revelation of the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach on a good and revealed basis. Teichef Umiyad mamish, mamish, mamish. Our story tonight, it commences in a far off island. When we're talking about islands, people think about whatever, the Hawaii. When we're talking about far off islands, there's an even bigger island down under. This is Australia. Australia was in the news. Unfortunately, Hanukkah, there was the terrible tragedy in the Sydney Jewish community. How we know there were people that were shot to death in the middle of the celebration of the holiday of Hanukkah. And here many people gathered together, and they went and they had the gatherings. One of the greatest gatherings was over 10,000 people that were. I mean, they all rallied together on their own in order to go and to be there at the next Hanukkah lighting, to show that the light of the Jewish nation, even though people come to torment the Jewish nation and to harass the Jewish nation and to test the Jewish nation to the extent of the utmost, which is Mesirus Nefesh, the mitzvah of giving over one's life in order to sanctify Hashem's name. The fact of the matter is that ken yirbe v'chen yifretz. If people, anyone on the globe thinks that this is going to deter the Jewish nation or hold the Jewish nation back from studying Torah, from observing the commandments of the Torah, from showing our belief and our trust in the Holy One, blessed be He, they have a very big mistake. And so also, after the tragedy, and there was a shliach of one of the Chabad houses that sat down and wrote. He sat down to write a letter to the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach. He's the shliach, the rabbi of a Chabad house there in Sydney. There are quite many Chabad houses in Sydney, Baruch Hashem. And this shliach sat down to write a letter to the Rebbe. And the letter had a twofold intention. A, to write the letter to the Rebbe in regard to the challenge that the Yidden of Sydney are experiencing, and the extent of how much pain there is in the Jewish community as a whole. And at the same time, he decided that he's going to write all the good resolutions and all the programs that he has already planned in order to go into to further the light, to strengthen the emunah and bitochon, the belief and the trust of the Jews in Sydney, and through this also the Jews all over the world. Because when such a thing happens in one community, and it's a quite essential community, even though it's so far away, this has the ramifications on how every single Jewish community and every Jew feels all over the world. And therefore, when we see that they, despite the fact that they went through what they went, and they are in pain, when we see that they are not only persevering with their Yiddishkeit, but they're growing and they're adding in their Yiddishkeit, adding in their Torah study, adding in the observance of mitzvahs and so on, and not on a hidden basis. Let's go hide and learn together Torah. We're not in the times of the Greeks or the Roman Empire. We're here in the 21st century, Rabbi Sai. We have to do it with Ge'eni Ainkev, with the pride of our grandfather Jacob, as we learn of and we read in the Torah, in these last portions in the Torah, together with the culmination of this week's portion, the portion of Vayichi, the finishing of the first book of the Pentateuch, the book of Bereshis, Sefer Bereshis. And so this shliach sat down and he's writing all his plans, all his activities, the activities that are going to be taking place, and the activities that he's planning to have to take place in the immediate future and the coming future. And all of a sudden, he gets a telephone call. Okay, it's something immediate, something urgent. He stops and he picks up the phone. And who's on the other side? His son. son, a young man, also a young shliach there in Sydney, and he says to his father, "Listen, I don't want to bother you, but I have to share with you something that just happened at this moment." No, the father says, "Come on, I'm writing the Rebbe a letter. I'll be able to add this to the letter. What's happening? Is everything okay?" First of all, you want to make sure, reassure that everything is under control. And says his son actually gives a laugh, and he says, "Everything is very much under control, but way above but I believe it's way above our capacity of understanding." And the father says, "Okay, continue." So he says, I just finished a long, I just finished a meeting with someone. As I came to the Chabad house," he starts telling from the beginning of the story. As he came to the Chabad house, so he notices that there's an individual sitting across the street in his car, and he's looking at the Chabad house. At the beginning, he was a little suspicious because, people sitting outside Chabad houses, and this person doesn't really look that Jewish. People sitting outside Chabad houses, you can never know. But then all of a sudden, he motioned to the young man if he would come over to his car. Cautiously, he came to the car, and he saw that the person looks to be a well-to-do person, not a person that you would have any fear from. And then, as he he approaches the car, the person steps out of opens the door, steps out of the car, and he asks the young man, "Tell me, is this is this a synagogue?" So he says, "Yes." So he reaches into the car, he takes out a big bouquet of flowers, and he puts it into the young man's hand, the shliach's son, and he says to him, "Listen." And he starts saying in a very deep, emotional voice, he says, I have a very, very great and strong solidarity for the Jewish nation, and especially the Jewish community of Sydney, and due to what they went through during the holiday. And then he says, if I may continue, he says that he's totally in an outrage in light of the terrorists and the act of the terrorists there here in Sydney, and he's up at arms as far as the government is concerned, the government of Australia, due to the fact that they spoke a lot about making laws to make sure that there will be no anti-Semitism in Australia, despite all the terrible uproars of anti-Semitism in the past year. But actually they enacted nothing. And the fact of the matter is, he feels, as a person that lives in Australia, he feels great responsibility. And therefore, he explains to the young man, he traveled 2 hours in order to reach Sydney, to reach Bondi Beach, and to be able to go and to show, to express his condolences for the Jewish community. And the shliach, even though he's a young man, he was very moved, and all of a sudden he decides to go and to explain to this person what the Rebbe tells us, what the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach explains in regard to the holiday of Hanukkah, and the fact that light always is victorious over darkness, and even a little light is able to dispel an enormous amount of darkness, a great amount of darkness. This man was very impressed with the explanation, and it actually, it gave the, he said that these words actually were able to alleviate part of his pain that he had for what happened. And then he says to the young man, he says, "Tell me something. So I would like to donate to the Jewish community. How could I donate?" So the young man points. There's a big poster outside the Chabad house, and he shows the poster of how there is a a fund that was organized for the families of the victims of the tragedy that happened at Bandai Beach during Hanukkah. And he says here. So he looks at the poster, and he takes down the details, and then he looks at the young man and he says, "Listen, but I would like to donate to your synagogue." And he points to the Chabad house where the young man was about to enter. So he says, "Fine." So the gentleman goes back to his car. He takes out his checkbook, and he writes out a check. He folds the check, and he puts it into the shliach's son's hand, and he shakes his hand, and he says, "Please give this to your father. I trust that he will know the most beneficial way to use this donation." And with that, he gets into his car and he drives away. Only after he drives away, the shliach dared to go and to take a peek to see, what was the amount of the donation. Yeah, I mean, you never know, When he looked, he was in a state of shock, he tells his father. And so his father said, "What do you mean a state of shock? I mean, how much did he give?" Did he give $180 did he give a $360? So he says, "Pa, you will never believe it. This man made out a check of $100,000 to the Chabad house." His father was in a state of shock, and he couldn't believe it because he was in the middle of writing the Rebbe all the good resolutions and everything, all the great plans that he has in order to come, for the Jewish community of Sydney, and at the same time, different thoughts always enter a shliach's mind, like, well, I have all these plans, but where am I going to get the backing in order to make sure that I'm able to carry out the plans? And as he's writing the Rebbe, immediately this story happened, and the news came from his own son, right in front of the Chabad house. It's needless to say that this is exactly where we need to be able to focus our minds on. We said that we're at the eve of the fast of the 10th of Tevet. In the Dvar Malchus of this week, of the 10th of Tevet, the Rebbe comes and tells us that we're supposed to be focusing on the goodness, on the inner essence of the 10th of Tevet, like we mentioned earlier. Not the fast, and not the meaning of the fast, not the siege that was placed by the Babylonians upon Yerushalayim, but the inner essence, which is that this is, yes, the most severest of all fasts. If it would fall on Shabbos, we would have to, theoretically, we would have to fast on Shabbos. But when we come and we see that this is the exact law that Rambam, Maimonides, he comes and he touches, he tells us all these fasts are going to be transformed into days of happiness and joy. Greater happiness and joy than all the festivals that we have today. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, all the greater festivals, and which from all the four, which is going to be the greatest of happiness and joy? Obviously, the most severest of all the fasts. We have the point of the severity of the 10th of Tevet. May it be transformed into goodness, and it should be seen on with all our five senses, with the revelation of the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach on a good and revealed basis, and it should be teichef umiyad, mamish, immediately now. Yechi Adonenu Moreinu v'Rabbeinu HaMelech HaMoshiach Chai v'Kayim le'olam voed. Amen.